We've all heard of the term passive income, but is it really passive and does that really exist? Inside this episode, I'm joined by the passive income guru, or as you'll learn, she calls it semi-passive, Lisa Johnson, as we dive into how to create more of this in our business. Hey, I'm Amanda, and welcome to the Best Damn Coach podcast, where I will teach you how to coach yourself, how to coach your clients, and how to run your coaching business. The number one goal of this show, though, is to help you be the best damn coach you can be so your clients go out and tell the world about you. So, let's do the damn thing. You guys, I am just so excited about the new things happening around here. It's been heavy on my heart to focus on connection this year inside of 2023. That's my word, my first time ever having a word, by the way. And what's happening inside of my personal life and business life by focusing on that is pretty amazing. And what I want to do is bring you into that. I've noticed after coaching hundreds of people over the years that taking action is the hardest part. We know what to do on paper. We struggle to make it happen for so many reasons. Much of it is just all the stuff that's happening inside of our brain. So I sat back and I asked myself, how can I bring together this amazing network of people I have met over the years, people that are listeners like you, people that follow social media? How can I bring you together to just help you reach your full potential and take action? And so I have decided to open up a weekly networking community focused on accountability. And it's called Do the Damn Thing. And I want you to be a part of it because I know no matter where you're at in business and life, you could absolutely use some support around being around like-minded women and doing the damn thing. So come join us every Wednesdays at noon Mountain Time. And we are going to come together and do the stuff we resist every damn week. What does that look like? That means we're going to hop on a Zoom session. I'm going to open up. I guarantee that you are going to walk away making 2 new connections every time you join us. We are going to declare what we are resisting. I'm going to give you some space to begin working on it, to dive in, and we're going to culminate with some reflection. I know that this is going to be valuable for you. Just being in the energy of other women who are wanting to take action on their dreams is so powerful. So come join us. You can sign up at amanda-walker.com/networking, all one word. When you jump onto that page, you're going to see a little button. It says sign up here to join and get the Zoom link. As soon as you click that, you'll enter your email address. And of course, we will email you back with all of the information regarding the sessions. Yes, we are doing this every single week because I want you to have an unbelievable shift in 2023 that starts with taking action. All right. Welcome to the BDC podcast. I'm so excited to have Lisa Johnson joining me today. And we met, I don't know, by way of the people. I'm not really sure. But we were connected through a former mastermind that we kind of both missed each other. And I heard all these amazing things about you. And through the connection of a mutual friend, she said, you guys have to meet. So after chatting via Zoom, definitely a lot of synergy there. So I'm just excited to allow your genius to pass on to my audience today. So welcome to the show.
Oh, well, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I always like to just let you tell your story a little bit. And I think yours is extremely inspiring to our listeners. Can you speak a little bit to like, how did you get to right now? Because it was not a linear journey.
No. So, I mean, if we want to go way back, I grew up in like welfare, council housing. I think you call it welfare over there in the UK. And so was born into poverty, generational poverty, always had that going on. And then when I was 11 years old, I got a scholarship to a private school. It was like the most prestigious school. It looked like Hogwarts, like Harry Potter fans. That's exactly what it looked like.
I'm a total Harry Potter fan. And I recently heard them called Potterheads.
Potterhead, you are. Yeah.
I never heard that before.
And so I went to this school thinking it was going to be great, but actually everybody was rich. I was poor. You know what kids are like. I was singled out and bullied from day one for being the kid in the lunch line that had the free meal ticket. And the secondhand uniform. And my dad used to pick me up on his motorbike because we were in a single parent family. And my dad brought me up, and they all got picked up in their Bentleys and their Porsches. And so I was different. And so I got bullied. So I didn't enjoy school. And so I left when I was 16 without really any qualifications because I just wanted to get out of there. And so I clawed up a corporate ladder from like office junior all the way up to eventually being in investment banking as a risk analyst. And I was doing quite well there. Like if people who lived with me or around me when I was growing up looked at me, I would be seen as successful. I was on like what you'd class as $60,000-$70,000 over there and doing quite well. And then my 30s, late 30s, I accidentally got pregnant with twins. So I was going through a divorce, got pregnant, children weren't on the cards. It was never something in my plan. And I was like, okay, I can deal with a child. I can do this. And then they said, oh, there's two. And there's no twins in my family at all. So it was a bit of a shock to the system. But I thought stupidly now as a parent, now I look back, well, it's okay. They'll just slot into my life. I'll just go back to work and it'll be fine. And I went back to work when they were 5 months old. And I used to leave the house at 6 a.m. I used to finish at 10, 11 p.m. at night. And realized very quickly that there was no way this could continue. I just wasn't ever seeing them. And I didn't, want to be that parent that never saw their kids and just left them with childcare all the time. So I decided to try and get a job nearer to my house so that I could at least do like the normal 9 to 5 and see them before I went to work. And the only jobs going were like the jobs I was doing 15, 20 years earlier. It was all admin assistant, personal assistant, office junior jobs. So that's what I had to do. And I started again from scratch, like rewrote my story and was like, okay, my salary went from like really good to 20,000 and I had two more mouths to feed. And so while I was there, I got bored because I was used to having quite a lot of responsibility and now I could do my work in 2 hours and the rest of the time I was playing on the internet. Mm-hmm. So I was like, well, what can I do to make more money? And I thought, well, I'll start a business. But I didn't know anybody that had ever had a business. I didn't know anyone that was an entrepreneur or anything like that. I didn't know what I was doing, but I thought I was going to give it a go anyway. So I'm quite an organized person. So I thought, well, I'll become a wedding planner. Because it sounds fun. that sounds glamorous. So let's do that.
Very good. I think a lot of girls think that event planning is in their cards.
I feel like it's J-Lo's fault at the end.
Highly influential movie. I mean,
yeah.
In your
So I did. I started that and I did quite well. I was doing it at the same time as my job. And I got 13 full planning weddings in the first year. And then I got a new boyfriend. And at the end of the year, who's now my husband, he was like, let's sit down and work out how much you're making, whether you can leave your 9 to 5 job. So we totted it all up and I was making $1.15 an hour. I was like, okay, you're never going to be able to leave your job. Why are you even doing this kind of work? Yeah. And I realized that I had to make a choice. I was either going to have to continue to live hand to mouth. At this point, I was around $40,000 in debt. So that was, generational poverty, generational debt. I was going to be the same as everybody else, live paycheck to paycheck, but at least I'd see my kids. Mm-hmm. Or I needed to learn about business. And so I decided to learn about business and to go all in. And so I went to every webinar. I became a self-development junkie, read every book, like every TEDx talk. I was just in it. And within, I'd say 7-8 months, I'd turned the wedding business around. I'd implemented what I'd learned, mainly about ideal client at that point, mm-hmm. Turned the business around and it started to make about the same amount I was making in my corporate role. So I was like, great, this is good. I'll do this. And carried on doing that. And for a couple of years, people would come to me and say, how have you done this? Like, how have you turned this around? We became one of the most well-known urban wedding planning companies in the UK. And people were asking how. So I'd say, well, I did this, 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 and this. And I could see in their businesses very quickly where the gaps were because I'd read everything. But I wanted to tell them what to do in a simple way because I don't believe business is complicated. I think people make business complicated. Mm-hmm. True, and so, yeah, I got rid of all the jargon and just went, do this, this, and this. And they did. And they'd come back to me going, I've just made loads more money. Like, you've just made it work. And this happened for a couple of years until when I was about 5 years ago now. If you'd have asked me what I wanted my life to look like, I would have said I wanted to travel. I've always wanted to travel. I never had the money. And I'd love to take the twins and travel during the summer. But I'd given myself where I was working every single weekend during the summer. I still had my 9 to 5 job, which I was just about to leave. I was like, something needs to change. Why don't I set up Lisa Johnson's strategy and start teaching people about what I've learned in the last few years in business? And so that's what I did. And I tried to sell my wedding company, but everybody that I interviewed, they just wanted to know how much money they could make. And this had been like my passion, my baby for like these few years. So I was like, I want it to go to somebody that really cares about brides and really wants the best for them. And so in the end, I said no to all the people that wanted to buy it. And I did a competition for someone that financially couldn't afford to have a business and needed the leg up. And I gave them the wedding business and they're still running it now and they're doing a grand job.
That's so cool. I had no idea about that.
Yeah, it was really fun. And then I left my 9 to 5, started Lisa Johnson Strategy. And then this time I did well because I'd learned all of my mistakes on the job in the wedding planning company. So this time, very quickly, within 6 months, I'd made 6 figures in profit. Within a year, I'd made 220,000. I was in magazines and standing on stages and people were saying, you're so successful. And I felt like the least successful person in the world because I was so burned out. I was giving up this 9 to 5 for a 6 a.m. till 11 o'clock at night on the sofa job, doing one-to-ones all the time. And just people were coming to me. I'd put my prices up 3 times. So it was around $10,000 to work with me. And people were coming to me saying, take my money. And I was like, I can't. I don't have any more hours in a day to do it. Mm-hmm. And the crux of it came when my kids were 5, 6, and they went to a new school. And in their first week at the new school, I forgot to pick them up. Mm. And the teacher called and was like, your kids are still here. And I was like, I was so busy and so burned out. My head wasn't even working properly. And I realized that something had to change. And so I started to look for a different business model than one-to-one with my coaching and my consulting, and heard a podcast where 2 people were arguing about whether passive income existed. And I got curious, like, oh, I like a bit of a spicy argument. I was like listening to that. And it took me down a rabbit hole of what the hell is this passive income stuff? And I started learning everything I could about passive income. And I decided to put half of the money I earned in the first year, so around 150,000, into learning from the best. So I learned about all different types, from cryptocurrency to courses to affiliate marketing.
Crypto right now.
Yeah, no, drop shipping, all of it. And luckily I didn't go into the crypto realm. I would have done, but I was too scared. So I kind of started to implement this stuff that I was learning during year 2 of my business. Some things didn't work. And I was just like, this doesn't work for me. Some things didn't feel aligned, but some things I thought this can work well. How can I make it better? Like, how can I learn what I've learned and then make it better? And I did. And so at the end of that first year, when I made the 220,000, I was working, 70 to 80 hours a week. It was ridiculous. By the end of the second year, I was working 30 hours a month and I was earning over $1 million. And that was when I realized, like, actually what people need is freedom. They need to learn this stuff. They need to learn all this passive income stuff. So I started teaching people, about courses and memberships and how to use the knowledge in their head, whatever it was, from dating to sex to like photography, like all these things that people know, confidence with kids, to teach other people who wanted that knowledge. And people always said, I don't have any knowledge. And everyone does. Like, everyone knows something that other people want to know. Like, everyone always said to someone, can I just pick your brains about something? And as soon as they say that, that's the thing that you should be selling. And so I started to teach other people this, realized I could trademark a system because I was telling them the same thing over and over again, trademarked the cash system, told people what to do. 6,000 people later and 5 years and $12 million. Here I am.
That's an amazing story.
It's been a crazy ride.
Well, I mean, so many pieces, of course, in the story that stand out, but the one specific thing that stands out the most to me is that you needed to go through all the things to figure out the thing. And I think this is where I see so many, I don't know if it's just the world we live in, but you would probably agree with this, is that when I'm coaching my coaches and my clients in general, is they do something for a month and then sometimes it's like, oh, this isn't working. And I'm like,
Hard.
yeah, no, exactly. This is like called delayed gratification. It's the biggest muscle you're going to really have to learn to lean into when it comes to entrepreneurship. The desire to get feedback immediately. That's not going to help build something that's sustainable. You know, the road is windy and you're evidence of what's on the other end.
I think we've kind of made a rod for our own back on this online world because, you know, if you speak to people who are our parents' age, they would say, if your business makes a profit or even breaks even within a 3-year period, you're doing well. Like it's a long-term sustainable business model. On this online world, if you haven't made 6 figures in 3 months, you've failed. Yeah. And that's ridiculous because then you will burn out and also you'll be a flash in the pan. And what you want is longevity. So you want something, maybe it will take a year or 2 to start making really good money. But so what? You know, it's worth it in the long run.
Well, I always say, if you lose 100 pounds and it takes you a year or 5 years, you've still lost 100 pounds.
Yeah.
And you're still success. And we have to take that variable of time and stop putting so much pressure on ourselves, because if you make $1 million, you make $1 million. And yes, you're only going to then amplify what's working and double down to, you know, extend that. So, okay. So you said you originally heard a podcast and this debate over, does passive income actually exist? And I love that you don't necessarily refer to it exclusively as passive income.
No.
So will you share a little bit about your perspective around, like, just set us straight? Because I love the way you teach it.
Yeah, I don't think it's passive, first of all. In the first year, it's the least passive thing you'll do. I call it leveraged income because you're leveraging your time. You're no longer trading time for money. And that's the crux of it. You're, you know, a normal person who, let's say, is a branding expert or a website designer, you give them money, they will do your brand. So they're always trading time. In this way of thinking, in this business model, you're not doing that anymore. It's finding different ways to do things so you're not trading your time for money. But the passive thing, it puts people off because it is a myth. And you can't just lay down on the beach and money will rain down on you somehow. Like, you're going to be putting in so much work in the first year. It becomes passive when you've done it a few times, but you won't think it's passive in that first year. You'll be working harder than any other kind of business model. I think you actually work harder at the beginning because you're growing an audience. You know, you're learning how to launch. You're creating all this content. Let's say you have a course. It's like the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth time that it becomes passive because you're using the same launch system, the same marketing, the same actual course that you've written. But at the beginning, it really isn't. But, you know, there's semi-passive income as well. Like, most people have semi-passive income. Barely anyone has passive income. And I wish I could call it leveraged income always, but no one knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, we do now when we get to hear it out of you. I think when we get into business and like you know, my journey is kind of like, how am I going to, you know, I kind of fell into entrepreneurship and then it was like, the money's coming in. Like, how do I grow this thing? And when the money starts coming and you're signing these one-to-one clients, it's like, this is amazing, but you don't have an exit strategy because you just didn't even think about that. And I remember a mentor of mine, a mutual friend of my husband and I, he said, I'm so happy that you're making this money. And if 1,000 clients came to you tomorrow, could you take them all in? And I was like, no. And that like hit me for a long time because I could see it, but I wasn't really clear on how am I going to make this happen. So in truth, I mean, I think we have similar journeys. I burnt it down a little bit to rebuild it so that tomorrow, if 1,000 people come to me and 1,000 more the next day, it's like, we welcome them all. We can take them all on. So I'm curious, do you have any feedback for just in the beginning stages, those first few years when maybe we're starting to see the success in those clients? Like, how do we start to think about the next step?
Yeah, I think it's really hard because a lot of the time we're working in the business so much in that first couple of years that we're not working on the business at all. We're just doing what comes, because I think there's a lot of us that just fall into entrepreneurship. We don't like have a whole plan. It just happens and we find we're good at something. And so we haven't really thought it out. But actually, if you can forward think, I'm a big believer in strategy. Like, if you can strategize what your next year, what you want it to look like, then you can very quickly start realizing what's going to go. So I wrote a big list of like all of the offerings I have and what needs to go for me to be able to kind of move into that next level of myself and of the business. And that actually meant a dip in revenue. Mm-hmm. Because it meant that I had to take away some stuff to make room to grow an audience, which took time for the next level. And people really fear doing a dip because it's like there should always be growth, but there shouldn't always be growth. You will have these up and down times when you're restructuring your business models. And even now, this year I was working with a coach. I believe that it doesn't matter how much money you make, you're always going to need somebody to guide you because you can't see the label when you're inside the box.
I love that you said that around here.
Like, you're always going to need it. So my coach said to me, okay, you're doing really well. You're at this multi-million mark, but your profit margin is 85%. You need to take your profit margin down to 20% and spend it on growth. And I was like, I don't want to do that. Like, that's terrifying. But I did. I took it down 20%. I took on 5 people. I learned a bunch of stuff. I took on freelancers. I acquired 2 companies and decided to grow. And it went down to 20%. And now it's going back up quicker than before because of the amount of stuff we did. And sometimes you've got to take these risks, and you've not got to think that everything has to be about high profit all the time and everything has to be about growth all the time. It shouldn't always be, there are fluxes in business.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad that speaks to me personally. And I think we all need to hear this because in a world of highlight reels and fluffiness and all the BS that we see out there, we're not seeing these conversations and the emotional and mindset requirement on your end or on whoever's ends during those downturn years to get yourself out of your own brain to think I'm not failing. This is part of the journey. Trust the process.
Yeah, and ignore all of the balloons that people are holding up on Instagram saying 1 million, 2 million. It doesn't mean anything. Yeah. We've got to think of a long-term business. I want to be in business in 5 years. I want to have an empire in 5 years. I don't care for these big numbers very quickly. It doesn't matter. And actually, people ask me all the time, what would you do differently? And the reality is, I wish I'd grown slower, but I didn't know what I was doing. I was growing quickly just because that's how it happened. These days, if I was to do it again, I would have slowed it right down because my mindset needed time to catch up. My brain needed time to learn about how to invest money instead of just going, I've got all this money, let's spend it on stuff. I needed that time to grow and I didn't get that time. We were already in multi-millions by year 3.
Yeah.
And that's not always a good thing. And people aspire to this so badly, but they don't look at everything that comes around it. Instead of chasing the money, we should be chasing the happiness.
Yeah, I agree. I'm reading a really great book right now called Things That Matter by Joshua Becker. It's meeting me where I'm at, but part of it is I always am thinking about myself is I don't want to be in an environment working where I'm dreaming of leisure time, right? Of escaping it. I don't even think about retirement because, people are like, how long is it? Because my husband recently retired from the PD, police department here locally. And they're like, what, are you guys living the retired life? I'm like, no, we both love what we're doing. I don't even know what that next phase really looks like. I'm 40 years old. But I think that part to me is a really key piece of this foundation too, is growing a business that you're not trying to just hit up so you can hit the weekend time and escape, right? It's enjoying the lifestyle that creating this, leverage income opportunities give us.
Yeah, and that might mean doing it slower and it might mean making less. For instance, I want to enjoy my life. So I take off of time, July, August, most of September, I'm not really working. My team's working a bit, but I'm not. I take the twins and do that thing I wanted to do, travel around the world. And because of that, we might get dips sometimes from, our usual 300,000, 250,000 a month might go down to 150,000. And most people panic at that, but it's a choice. Yeah. I don't want to just be thinking I have to hit these figures all the time. I want to be thinking, what does my life look like? Am I enjoying it?
Agreed.
That's more important.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about your book and what inspired you to decide I'm going to write a book.
I didn't decide. Okay, so it's a story. So for ages, people were asking me to do a podcast, start a podcast. And I was like, no. This doesn't sound like something I would enjoy. I don't want to sit there. Like, I'm too open. And if I'm on a podcast and I can't see people's faces, I will tell the whole truth about the things that I don't like in this business world, about integrity and all sorts of things. So it's not something I should do. And then people kept asking me, and I was like, all right, I'll do it. And I started this podcast, and I had advisors at the time saying, right, you need to get it to number one in this chart and this chart. And the way to do that is to get, like bribe people to vote for you, and, don't tell them not to bother listening to it, but just to give you a review. And I was like, I'm not doing any of that. That's against everything I believe in. Instead, I'm going to put it out there and say, if you like it and you've listened to it, please subscribe. And that's what I did. And weirdly, it got to number one in the UK business charts. And I became the only non-famous person to do that in over 2 years.
That's amazing.
So it got out, that was crazy. It knocked Stephen Bartlett off, which was a fun day. And then because of that, unbeknownst to me, the publishing houses, when they're looking for their next author talent, they listen to podcasts and they listen to whoever's number one there, because they know that that person's likely to have a bit of an audience. And so suddenly I got a phone call from one of the top 3 publishers saying, hey, we want you to publish a book. Have you got a book proposal? And I'd written one before and never dared send it to anyone because I didn't think I was good enough. So I sent it to them and they gave me a preemptive offer, and which I was like, yeah, I'll accept it. A week later, another top 3 author called and did the same thing. I had no agent. So I was suddenly in this, like, they were fighting for me and I was trying to negotiate myself to get the advance up. And I just did it all myself. And in the end, I chose the one that I thought was most aligned integrity wise with the message I wanted to put out there, and then wrote this book. And then before the book even came out, we put it onto pre-order. And in pre-order, 3 months before it came out, it got to number 67 on all the books in Amazon ever. So that gets to number 67. So then my publishers asked straight away, can we have a second book? So now I'm like in second book phase. But yeah, first book was fun to write because I didn't want to make it just a how-to. It's a very easy step-by-step how to make money online. Mm-hmm. But I thought that would be so dry. Like, I know it would help people, but it would be dry. And so I decided to put my story in there amongst it. So things that have happened to me in my life that have relevance to the chapters that people are reading. And that made it more fun for me.
Yeah. I mean, the stories of people and making the connection are so relevant. Like, you see yourself inside the story, you connect with the content at a much deeper level. What do you feel like was the thing that you most resisted in sharing or in writing about when it came to sharing your story?
It was really tricky because, like you and I have spoken before, I am massive on integrity in the online world. Like, it's my biggest passion, is changing the BS out there that we see. And I wrote this whole book and I knew all the way through writing it that there was a chapter missing, and it was on ethics. And I knew I needed to write about it, but I was like, this is going to really hack people off, because I'm going to have to say what I really think about a lot of the goings on online. And, a lot of my peers are doing this kind of stuff because that's what they've been taught to do. Like, the urgency, the FOMO, the pain points, all of the stuff we see, the invisible offers and all the rest of it. And I thought, I'm going to have to write about it, because otherwise it's not true to me and what I really think. And if this next generation of coaches is going to be reading this book, I want the ripple effect to take place. I want them to do it in a different way. I'm proof that you can do it in a different way. Mm-hmm. And so I wrote that chapter, and like, even pressing send to the publisher, I was like, oh God. And they wrote back to me and they were like, okay, can any of these people be identified? And I was like, I mean, it's a small world online. So we had to change like females to males and like locations to countries and all different kinds of things to make it possible to do. But it's in there.
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, you and I are both similar in that integrity space. And I think that the more people like you share that, though, the more the rest of us feel safe to also combat some of those ethical dilemmas that we're facing. And it is true. You don't know what you don't know. And I remember really clearly my first coach, who I loved and really was influential in my life and in my business. And I doubled my revenue that year. It really wasn't much strategy, but I remember very clearly, this is probably 3 years ago. And I was telling her, I want to leverage my income. And she says to me, you don't want to like write like all those sales funnels and emails and just like people show up. And I was like, oh, she's right. I don't really want to. And then I was like, she's wrong, actually.
I do
Like,
want
I do
it.
want all those things, right? And I bring that up because we have to tap into what feels within integrity for us consistently in our business. And if you have that nudge that something doesn't feel right, or contrary, if something feels amazing, then you have to lean into that because there's not a right way.
No, and it's your intuition. Like, trust that intuition. My first coach told me to fake it till I make it and just lie about how much I'm earning online, because then people will want to work with me.
And there's a whole crap ton of that happening out there.
Yeah, but they're being taught it. And that's why I almost have no judgment for these new people that are coming in and doing some of these tactics, because they're just following others that are doing it. So the more of us that they can see that are doing things in a different way, that ripple effect takes place. So that's why I talk about it so much. And you do get a backlash talking about these things, but quite frankly, I don't care.
Yeah, nor do I. And you know where I struggle is when I see former clients that I've worked with in some capacity, and I got to see the real side, the real inside of it as the coach, and then the what is being conveyed on the outside is a different story. And man, I have to coach myself a lot. Like that's not for me. Like, they have to face their demons and their internal battle of not walking the walk. I cannot point that direction out for them. At some point, like, it will be revealed, or they will find the answer to that. And I think that that's, just transparently something I struggle with too.
It's hard. I've had the same, but in masterminds.
Same.
So I've been in masterminds where, people are shouting about certain things, but then in a mastermind, they're telling you the truth about what's really happening behind that business. And I'm like, how is this so different? And I've had to not be in there. Like, I can't cope with it at all.
True. I mean, definitely have had those hard lessons learned as well. So, you're amazing. Thank you for being transparent. I would love for you to share the book, where we can find the book, and where we can connect more if we want more information about your programs, etc., all the good stuff.
Yeah. So the book is out in the UK. I think you can still get it on Amazon. It's called Make Money Online. It's nice and easy, but it has a proper book launch in May. In the US. The US book launch is in May.
So does that mean you come to the US and go on an official tour? Ooh, exciting.
So, yeah. I'm excited about it. And programs wise, I have one big program that comes out once a year called One to Many. It's how to make passive income step by step, me doing it with you, get a bespoke sales funnel made for you by my team, because that's always the thing that stops people. And yeah, that comes out once a year. That's out in March. So yeah,
right around now when we release it. We'll be sharing more about the details of that program as well with our audience as time goes on too. So I'm honored that you joined us. Such a fun conversation. And I know that all of our listeners are walking away with like little mind-blowing nuggets. So thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you for letting me be here and chat to you.
Every week, I put my heart and soul into this podcast to bring you value and to help you grow as a person and as a coach. And one of the ways, very simple ways you can return that favor is by leaving us a review. So if you haven't left us a review, head on over to Apple or Spotify, leave us a review, let us know how we're doing, let us know what content you love and which content pieces are really speaking to you now.